Because you see, life is like a voyage. Sometimes the sea is calm. Sometimes the wind blows softly. Sometimes the sun is shining. Thank God for those times. Maybe that's where you are right now, just sailing along. And if you are, enjoy it. It's a gift of God. But sometimes the wind rises. Sometimes the sky darkens. Sometimes we find ourselves in the midst of a terrible storm. And that's the way life is.
Maybe you're in a storm. You didn't plan on it. It was completely unexpected. But you're in the middle of it, and you're wondering if you'll survive. Could be a physical storm. Maybe it's a relational storm with your spouse, your kids, your parents, or a friend. The relationship that meant so much to you is now in deep trouble. Maybe your financial boat is getting rocked by heavy waves. You're sinking deeper and deeper in debt and wondering if you'll ever be able to get your head above water again. Maybe it's an emotional storm. For you, the storm is internal. You're fighting a battle no one else can see. With depression, anxiety, or fear, you're in a storm. In Matthew chapter 8, the disciples found themselves in a literal storm on the Sea of Galilee. We pick it up in verse 23. Then Jesus got into the boat and his disciples followed him. Without warning, a furious storm came up on the lake so that the waves swept over the boat. Now, before we even really start the story, I have to share with you an important fact. The disciples followed Jesus into that boat. If you go back to verse 18, you read this. When Jesus saw the crowd around him, he gave orders to cross to the other side of the lake. It was Jesus' plan. It was Jesus' idea to be in that boat, on that sea, at that time. This may be the most important thing you learn today. Storms come even when you're following Jesus. If you're in a storm and you're wondering where you went wrong, I want to encourage you, this storm doesn't necessarily mean you've missed God. Some storms are of your own making. But often, storms come even though you're following Jesus.
Being a Christian never exempts you from a storm. Don't think that because you have a tough time, you're disobeying God. The disciples got in this storm because they obeyed God. Jesus said, get in the boat. They got in the boat and sailed right into a storm. They were right in the center of God's will, but in the middle of a storm. So when you're going through a tough time, do not automatically assume I must be out of the will of God, because you might be exactly where God wants you to be. Storms are impartial.
These disciples were not out of the will of God. Why were they in a storm? They were in a storm, don't miss this, they were in a storm because they were in the will of God. It was Jesus that constrained them to get into that boat. They were in this storm because they were obeying Jesus. Why would Jesus want them to be in a storm? Because he wanted them to grow. I want to ask you a question. Those of you who've been on the trail for a while, when did you grow the most? When everything was fine? When you were smoothly sailing? Or when the storm came?
And sometimes God allows very difficult situations in life to do what? To grow us up. And I think that if God allows a storm in your life, that its ultimate purpose is to bring you out stronger.
You will learn things in storms that you will never learn any other way.
A calm sea never produced a good sailor. How would you like to go on the seas with a sailor who had never been on troubled seas? If you're going to have a good life, it means you're going to go through stuff. But the purpose of that stuff isn't to harm you. God allows it or causes it to grow you up, to grow me up.
And the lesson is that Jesus can be trusted in the storms of life. And the only way you're ever going to prove that true is to go through them. That's it. If you'd never had a problem, you'd never know God could solve them.
It's God who is the master of the winds and the waves, and He's the one who causes storms to come. It is a shallow theology, a very shallow theology that says if we're in the will of God, that we're just going to sail always smoothly on the sea of life. No. Listen, we are going to have difficulty. And the first thing that you can say when difficulty comes is that God's providence is over it all. I am governed by His providence. God's wonderful plan is in effect. Now, God's plan is not to indulge you. God's plan is to enlarge you. Psalm 4, verse 1. Thou hast enlarged me when I was in distress. Thou hast enlarged me when I was in distress. I am growing by His plan.
The disciples didn't expect a storm, but now this group, several of them, by the way, expert fishermen, were fighting for their lives as the waves threatened to sink their boat. The disciples thought they weren't going to make it. Jesus was so disturbed by the storm that He was taking a nap. Well, the disciples panicked. Jesus slept. Here's why that's so encouraging. It lets you know Jesus isn't intimidated by your storm. To you, it seems impossible, unending, devastating. Jesus, on the other hand, isn't frightened by it in the least. They shifted their attention from the winds and the waves and the storm to Jesus. They recognized we can't handle this by ourselves. There's nothing we can do. We better wake up Jesus. When storms come, never forget, Jesus is in the boat with you. Jesus is in your boat.
Well, friend, maybe you're in a storm right now, like the disciples in this boat. Here's my question. Who's in the boat with you? It's Jesus. He's in our boat. He's in our life. And we would do well to remember who He is and what He can do. He still quiets storms, and He can quiet the heart of His child in the middle of a storm.
If you're going through a storm, the first lesson you got to learn is God is always with you if you're a believer. There will be nothing I will face or you the rest of our life alone. Jesus is in my boat. He's in there. He's in my life and in my boat. And if you're a believer, He's in your boat too. God promises every believer, lo, I am with you always. I will never leave you or forsake you. Isaiah 43, verse 1 and 2. Fear not, for I have redeemed you. I have called you by name. You are mine. When you pass through the waters, I'll be with you. When you pass through the rivers, they will not sweep over you. What a promise. If your boat's rocking, don't worry. If you're a believer, Jesus is in your boat. So remember God's closeness. He's still with you.
I understand you're in a storm, but you don't have to face that storm alone. Jesus said, in this world, you will have trouble, but be of good cheer, for I have overcome the world. The one who created this world and the one who overcame death is in your boat. You don't have to fear the storm because Jesus is in your boat. I don't know how people face the storms of life without Jesus. Mark, in his telling the story, gives us Jesus' words. Jesus stood up in the boat. He arose and rebuked the wind and said to the sea, "Peace, be still." And the wind ceased, and there was a great calm. There are a lot of wind and waves around us. None of that knocks Jesus out of the boat. None of that intimidates Him. In the middle of it all, in spite of it all, you can turn to Jesus, and with just 3 words, peace, be still, Jesus can calm your storm. Jesus is not intimidated. He's not afraid. He's with you. He's in the boat. He can and will speak peace to you, even in the middle of your most terrifying storm.
Jesus expects you to trust Him in the storm. Regardless of your storm, Jesus is your solution. Jesus promises to bring you through your storm. Look at verse 35. On that day, when evening came, he said to them, "Let us go to the other side."
Jesus didn't tell them it'd be an easy trip. He didn't say they wouldn't get wet. He didn't say they wouldn't have an attack or be scared. He just says, we are going to the other side. And they did. You're going to make it. We're going to make it. And notice what Jesus said to the disciples in verse 26. You of little faith, why are you so afraid? Now that tells me two things. The root of their problem was fear, and the solution to their problem is faith. The greatest threat to the lives of the disciples was not the storm. It was their unbelief. The secret of victory over fear is faith. And even if you have faith the size of a mustard seed, you can move a mountain. So you don't have to have super faith. You just have to have that little bit of faith in a great big God. That's the issue. See, everybody's got faith, but you don't have to have a bunch. You can put a little faith in a big God and get big results.
God can handle it. God's bigger than your storm.
I don't have to have the answer. I just know who does. I don't know. I know enough history to know he'll bring me through. I don't know how. I can't see it, but I know he'll bring me through. And so there's only one thing that can calm your storm, and that's Jesus. But you got to get him in your boat. You got to get him in your life. You got to have Jesus in your life to make it through the storms of life.
But listen to me carefully. Whenever you are in a storm, Jesus knows about it. He's close by, and he's waiting for you to ask for help. I'll never leave you nor forsake you is his promise. Think about that. Jesus has said to every one of us who are his children, I will never leave you nor forsake you.
You aren't alone. You aren't alone. We do not walk this road alone. That's why we can say with confidence, you'll survive this storm. You will. Because you're not alone. You belong to God. God has never promised a life with no problems. But God has promised to be there when we face them.
But storms are temporary. They don't last. There are no eternal storms. Mark Twain and a friend walked outside one day in a rainstorm. The friend said, you think it'll stop? Mark Twain said, always does. Always does. That's true with any storm. You got to go through it, but it won't last forever. You know, morning's coming. Maybe dark right now, but morning and the sun will shine again. Because some of you are in a major storm right now. And God's word to you is the sun will shine again. There is hope. God is with you.